Here on The Colour of Country Life, great to be chatting with Richard Orchard, running for Riverina for the One Nation Party. How are you, Richard?
Good, thanks, Ricky.
It's good to be talking to you. I know other elements of the media have been talking about ghost candidates with One Nation. Quite clearly, you're a real person.
Absolutely real. I've lived and worked within the Riverina area, what is now the Riverina electorate for many years. I was Albie Schultz's electorate officer when he was member. When for Hume, after redistribution, half of Hume is now Riverina, and Hume has picked up some of Western Sydney. So
you're from the more easterly part of the Riverina electorate, I gather.
Yeah. So I live between Goulburn and Wagga Wagga, so I'm sort of sharing myself around between Hume and Riverina these days, simply because, I've got a partner who's from Wagga Wagga for the last 15 years, so we've been, camping in both places, I guess. We both call both towns home.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, we chatted recently with Kate McCulloch, who's the lead Senate candidate for One Nation in New South Wales. She's a Riverina resident as well, I gather, from down Coral way.
Not from the seat of Riverina, but certainly on the...
Right, down that southern part of the state at least, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, she's from our region.
Yep. So what is it you're wanting to offer the voters of Riverina that they might not be able to get from Michael McCormack, the Nationals' incumbent MP?
I think the ability to actually have some sort of power over our own lives, being that, when Turnbull said that the Liberal Party, and I'd say that that's a national party as well, is a broad church, and it includes people who are, conservative country people who are having to make compromises with latte sipping inner city people with man buns on a daily basis. So, those people, the compromises that are made generally don't serve country people well. And I think from, the agriculture industry, the infrastructure that we require to build our economy in the area, and also just being represented and having someone say what they think is always going to be edited by the compromises that are made by the Liberal Party's broad church. So I think that if I'm in a balance of power position, I think that gives us as a community, an extended community, a lot of say in how, regional Australia influences policy that comes out of Canberra.
Well, I noticed that the National Farmers Federation complained on the weekend before the federal election there was not enough focus on agriculture policy coming into this election. I would have thought that's a pretty key industry in the electorate of Riverina.
Exactly. And when you read the NFF's list of initiatives that they wanted to put up, I can agree wholeheartedly with their whole package of that they want little bits of funding here and there and little bits of policy change. I think that they could probably be a lot more bold in some of those requests, and I'd really like to represent or to take some of the blinkers off as far as asking for small change. I think that, we can really develop that industry and our regions based on, agriculture and the industries that support them a lot more than even what the NFF have dared to ask.
Yeah, I noticed one of those things that is in the One Nation policy platform that we've received is about dams and constructing dams. Some of them have been overflowing. We've been talk about raising the height of some of the dam walls to keep more water back and mitigate floods. Is there any in Riverina that you'd like to sort of add dams or raise the dam walls?
Well, most of what comes into the Riverina is the way the hydrology works, comes from the mountains further west, and also actually not the Lachlan area. It's all Murrumbidgee and Tumut sort of area that comes down there flowering. So the landscape's difficult to actually, to build something that is like Warragamba Dam because there's no mountains. But it's water rights. And so, the MurrayDarling Basin plan, for instance, allows for pretty much the rescindment of water rights in so many cases for access to water that's there now, that's running down the river. Of course, in a drought, you can't extract what's not there. But when there's good flows, you can. And there's also this idea that there's lakes at the mouth of the Murray that are kept as freshwater lakes, which, they could quite easily be saltwater lakes and probably have been in the past. So that's sort of one of those environmental demands that may be misguided.
Well, on that basin plan, there's been conversation from others, farming groups, more so in the New South Wales part of it, about pausing the plan. Is that something that One Nation supports, putting the plan on hold and having a look at the impact it's having on farming communities?
Absolutely, yes. redesigning it, making sure that, it's like that there's a religious movement of environment, whether it be emissions or Murray-Darling Basin, whatever. We've just got to go back to represent all the stakeholders, that are affected, and for us to be able to represent the farming community and to maximise the economic benefit we can get out of that water.
Now, speaking of the farming community, New South Wales Farmers President James Jackson told us last week, and he's a veterinarian himself, he's very concerned about lumpy skin disease and foot and mouth, both detected recently in Indonesia, projecting it could cost Australia's economy $100 billion if that got loose in a meat processing sector, particularly that's very strong in our nation. He's talking about having a levy on containers coming into the country to help recurrently fund biosecurity. Is that something you'd support?
It's an interesting idea. I'd certainly be more inclined to talk about that particular initiative and listen to see whether that's that's something that the law of unexpected consequences runs far and wide is the problem. There's other stakeholders that are affected by every decision that's made. Some of the things that we might like to do, though, is, we import meat, from the World Trade Organisation that we signed up to says, yes, you have to import Canadian pork, for instance, with all the risks that come with that kind of thing, as well as the fact that it's kind of ridiculous because we produce our own meat. Those things about being a little bit more independent, I think, and having risk assessed our supply lines. I noticed even ScoMo, after I told Mr McCormack that he was asleep at the wheel on the risks of supply lines, things like fuel and AdBlue, what other products and services do we not even know what could be turned off or could be affected by poor supply or have an enemy country involved in the supply chain?
Now, I noticed when I was driving around in my local area, some posters have appeared, which is Pauline Hanson's body, but it's got Scott Morrison's face on it, saying a vote for One Nation is a vote for Scott Morrison. Is a vote for you a vote for Scott Morrison?
Well, so there's a couple of things here. You can, a person when they fill their vote out needs to, how they apportion preferences, whether they follow my How to Vote card, which is just a guide, or whether they make up their own idea. That's how their preferences flow. There's no secret deals, that I can take your vote and give it to Scott Morrison. I would imagine in a seat that only had 20% of people vote for the Labor Party last time there was an election, that most people would be horrified, though, if I was to be elected and I was to make Anthony Albanese Prime Minister. I think that 80% of people would be horrified by that. So, that's one of the considerations that would have to be taken into account is if a minority government occurs, then we probably need to have a quick discussion as a community and as a One Nation team about how those, how the dice fall, I guess.
All right. Well, I'm out of time here today, but good to chat with you, Richard, and all the best for the 21st of May. Appreciate your time with us here on Flow.
No worries, Ricky. Thank you.